Okay, so like you like to travel and you like to do all of those things. Do you think that you
Hmm.
attribute that to like maybe moving around a lot, like when you were younger?
Yeah,
Or
I
do you
mean,
just think that you're adventurous and you want to?
no, I think I some of it is, I'm not going to completely self-diagnose, but I do think as kids we did move around, right? And this, like, I think that was kind of normal. At least I see it in our extended family, because the grandparents all moved from Saskatchewan to BC, and then they moved back, and I think a lot of it, when our parents had kids, that it was a support system, right? So you kind of,
Hmm.
they kind of moved in clusters, not
Yes.
necessarily at the same time. But I
No.
remember being my parents intentionally moving us back to Saskatchewan to be close to the grandparents. My mom got a job, moved her job from BC to Saskatchewan, and so there was some practicality around that. But I think my adventure, I don't know where that really came from, except that I've always wanted to see the world. I'm very interested in culture. I'm very
Hmm.
interested in the way people live. I'm curious about a lot of things. And I think when we were raising our kids, like, we had 5 kids and we were poor. We were trying to eke out a bit of a living off of an artist income, because Trevor was an artist, is an artist.
Yeah.
But in those early days, I didn't work at all, right? Well, I didn't work at all for a lot of those years because I was with the kids.
Hmm.
But to try to make enough money off an artist income was really difficult, for sure. But I think I was very creative in, you know, oh, your job is, paying for a flight to go to California. Tell them not to get a flight. Get gas money and we'll drive.
Hmm.
And then we all crowd into the hotel room. But I think I it was in some ways it was a bit of a luxury because I was a stay-at-home mom. So, and I was never the kind of stay-at-home mom where everybody had to have a routine, and like, we were just doing whatever fun thing came up, and often our kids would come with us, right? So they
Yeah.
learned to be quite flexible, and I'd pack all the kids up every summer to go out to Christopher Lake to be with my mom. um we just did those things.
Yeah, I think like we
Yeah.
did that too. Like we did a lot of, like those traveling and stuff too, because I know at one time, like we were in Saskatchewan. Well, I mean, I was born there. And then,
Hmm.
like when my parents got divorced, and I kind of touched on this before, but my parents got divorced and I ended up, moving in with my grandparents. And then the three of us moved to BC and we were there for many years. And that was probably the best time of my life. Like that farm was amazing. Like
Hmm.
I loved that place. Like there was so many great memories there, and my granny was just great. Like we'd go horseback riding when she was done work, and we'd go on an adventure up in the mountain and stuff. It was a great time. And I remember like I moved kind of back and forth. I went and lived with my mom for a little bit. I went and lived with my dad for a bit, and then I came back, and then I kind of got stuck in Alberta. But when Granny and Grandpa moved from BC back to Saskatchewan, I really haven't been out that way since what was it, a few months ago when I came and saw you. Was probably the first time I'd been back there
Mm.
in years. And but yeah, like you can see it, like kind of like one starts to move, then another group moves, and but we're kind of all over the place. We kind of are around each other at like a group of us
Yeah.
at some point. I mean, I guess not me. I'm lone wolf in it, but you know, like yeah, I
Yeah.
don't yeah, like I don't have it. I mean, you have my aunt out there, and you know grandpa has other people out there. Oh, and you have my uncle out there too, right? So there's not really anybody in
Hmm.
Alberta actually. So what, I don't know what I'm saying.
Yeah. Yeah. Here you are, a lone wolf.
I know I am alone. I don't know why for a moment there I was like, we kind of move in these pods, but we don't. I think at
Well,
one
and I
time
think
they
about,
did.
well, yeah, yeah. Oh, was that very loud for
No.
I didn't shut off my notifications, so
Oh, I didn't even
let's
hear
do
anything.
that. Oh, good. Hopefully it won't come through. Hopefully it's just me. Um But I do think the moving around thing, which by the way, everybody, is our theme for today.
Oh
If we
yeah.
have a theme, that's it. Um, but no, I think the moving around thing for me as an adult with kids, I think that was just part of, we're too poor to do much. So let's be
Yeah.
creative with what we have. Like when my brother he lived in Scotland. So when I convinced Trevor that maybe we should go to Scotland and we'll get a seat sale and we'll just take the two older girls because the younger ones were pretty small. We can stay with my brother. So there was always a way to make it a little less expensive, make it a little more accessible. Same thing when we went to Ecuador. Of course, your aunt, my cousin, lived there, so it was, you could find a way to kind of do it that in a way that made sense. But we got the travel bug. We really loved that. But there's also something about just jamming all the kids in a minivan and going on a
Hmm.
road trip
Oh,
somewhere.
I know.
You know, we
Yeah.
did that so much and just loved it.
Yeah. Well, like we don't venture too far, only just because like Lincoln and Bentley, like
Mm-hmm.
we don't like to venture too far, but we do a lot of camping, and so it's so nice to always just like throw everybody in the vehicle and like camping for the weekend and stuff. And there's
Yeah.
something about that, just sitting around the fire and just relaxing and being with each other, and just enjoying each other. I really,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I really like that. I too am about like the kids and hanging out and being with
Mm-hmm.
them and enjoying
Where it
them.
just can be relaxed. Although I do have to say that those trips, when we were going out to the lake or packing everybody in the minivan to go somewhere, Trev and I are not big fighters. We're pretty good
Yeah.
about, we've learned, right? And maybe
Hmm.
in the early years it was a little more volatile than it would be now, but I remember, and I know there's so many moms who can relate to this, but honestly, I would be doing for a week, getting everything packed for all the kids and pets, because of course we always had pets, and getting the
Hmm.
house, like, you got to clean the house before you go. You got to make sure there's not wet, gross towels on the floor somewhere, or the garbage isn't, overflowing. You can't leave food in the fridge. You're going to be gone for a while. Like plants have to be
Yeah.
all of it.
Yeah.
All the men out there, I'm generalizing, so forgive me, but are just like, what's the big deal? And all the women are like, yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. And I just like touched a fraction of the list. And
Yeah.
Trevor always would be working till the last minute. And again, who can fault him? He's working on, got work, got 5 kids to feed, right? Like no shade to him for having to work, but for some reason it always took all night the night before we're supposed to go, because he's got to deliver it, got the deadline, he's trying, and I know he's trying his best. I never felt like he was doing anything intentionally. But then you're ready to go the next morning. I've hauled ass out to that minivan to load it all up and make sure, got his coffee cup and we're good. And then he starts to pack his nice little cute bag, you know. And then and he can't find his own stuff. Where's my whatever? And it's like, are you serious right now? Like you can't even find your
Yeah.
own underwear? Like really?
No.
Come on. And you can be sure that I washed them all. You can be
Hmm.
sure that I didn't like wait for him to do his own laundry. Now I would,
No.
but at that
Hmm.
point it's like, hey, I got to get everybody out the door. And so we would finally get everything packed. Then he would tell me he's got to pick up batteries somewhere. He's got to stop at this store. He's got to get gas in the car. Like all the errands now. We're going to jam 5 kids and and the dog in the car, and then we're going to run errands. And
Yeah.
9 times out of 10, we would always do this thing. We'd put everybody in the car, everything was packed. We'd go back in the house to do a last look around, lights off, check. And that's usually when I would explode, where I would be, because
Oh
I'm not going to
yeah.
get mad at him in front of the kids, but I would have some sort of
No.
like meltdown. And he's like, what's going on? And I like, it would just set the tone for the trip, right? And it's like
Hmm.
that frustration would build so much. And then, of course, kids are wondering like where are they? We're all strapped in our car
Yeah.
seats.
Yeah.
It's like
Like
just
what's
watch your
happening?
movie.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
can I can I can say for myself, like I've been very fortunate that way with Rob. Like I've never actually like had that. Like we've always worked as a team, and I don't know if it's just maybe the situation that we're in, that like we both have something to tackle, because it's just too much to do it on your own. And so
Mm.
getting ready to go places and stuff like that, like we kind of divvy up stuff, and so like we work really well together that way. Now, don't get me wrong. There's been arguments. Try and, you know, direct your husband backing in a, you know, a 30 some foot trailer when it's 800 degrees out and you have kids that are like sitting there or, you know, whatever. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's times when you're like, rah! But, you know, it isn't so much getting ready. It's, it's the packing, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah.
So yeah,
Oh
but
gosh.
yeah, I've been lucky that way, but you know,
Yeah.
it,
But I think the
oh, go ahead.
benefits outweigh the cons. Pros outweigh
Mm-hmm.
the cons. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's that family
But
time
yeah.
too. It's those memories. Like, even if
Hmm.
you're having a meltdown, it's the memories that you're creating. Like I always say, you know, yes, it's hard to do. It's hard to get these kids ready and packed up and all that stuff to go somewhere, but it's what's going to be at the end of that that I enjoy
Hmm.
and I cherish, right? So it's okay for all of that chaos before. It's
Yeah.
just, you know, well, and then I guess the chaos after, you know, when you got to come home and unpack everything and it's, you know,
Yeah.
that's fun too.
Yeah. Then you're doing laundry for a month. It's like, wait,
I
do we really
know.
need, where's that suitcase?
Uh-huh.
But I think too about all the travel and moving around we did with our kids. And I think that was kind of the downside of having your own too much freedom in our jobs, right? Too much freedom to be able to do it from wherever we are. And we've been fortunate, right? Because Trevor's gotten work in Toronto, Montreal, Australia, Puerto Rico. So, like, we've always been able to connect to those trips and be a part of it or move or whatever. And it never really occurred to me like our kids changed schools a lot. If a school wasn't working, we'd change it. We didn't want our kids
Mm-hmm.
to be, you know, in a situation that they didn't like or they felt unsafe, or if and to be fair, many of those moves were just us wanting the change and really telling
Mm-hmm.
ourselves that it was good for kids to have, you know, that change was good for them. And generally speaking, on the face of it, they were excited about it. But I don't think we really realized until later that the impact that had on them, like to change so many
Mm-hmm.
times and move around so much. And our kids are very
Yeah.
close to each other, which is probably a result of them having to be their own friends in many ways, right?
Mm-hmm.
And but I look back now and I think, yeah, it was probably, it shaped them in certain ways, and maybe some in some ways positively, but not in all ways. I think
Mm-hmm.
it's difficult. But on the upside, our kids are all very adventurous. They all love
Mm-hmm.
traveling. They all love trying new things. They're not really afraid to try new things,
Yeah.
and you know. But I think that's, it had to have taken some a toll on them for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah. I know, like for myself, like moving around a lot, I think, you know, they often say that sometimes, like, you know, being the new kid and, you know, it, can kind of create like anxiety or, you know, like because you're not fitting in and you're meeting new people all the time and you're not really getting into like the social part of like school and like, you know, settling in and stuff because you're moving all the time.
Hmm.
um you know, I know that there were parts of my life where like I was in a place for a long period of time, but then there was also times where I was there for like 6 months or a year just because I was floating around with my parents and, you know, being a typical teenager who was
Yeah.
like, I don't like your rules, so I'll go here, you know. And
I'll go
my
back to
mom will let me do
Granny's.
whatever. Yeah, right.
Okay.
So, you know, but I think like, you know, like how you said, like it shaped your kids, right? And I know that it did for me as well. Like I know that, you know, I know that it made me be able to sort of like face those things and deal with them by myself, you know,
Mm,
and which created like some confidence and, you know, which I think is a good thing because I wasn't afraid to do those things, right? Because change happened. And, you
hmm.
know, like I talked to my husband who he wants to stay here because change is hard, right? Meeting new people and a new area. And for me, I'm like, I could just pick up and go. You know, I think
Hmm.
I enjoyed that change because it was fun. It was adventurous. You know, you met new people and, you know, I think the only thing I
Yeah.
regret is like having those really hardcore friendships and really intense good friends and then leaving and not
Yeah.
having that anymore. I think that's the only thing that sort of
Hmm.
bothered me about moving. But
Yeah, I know with us moving so much, the friendships, and we did talk about friendships on another episode, but the core friendships that I have, I can think of two in particular, or three, that they're it doesn't matter where we live.
Mm-mm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
we'll make plans to be together. You know, I already know I have a conference in Ottawa in January, and already we're making plans to be
Mm-hmm.
together, right? So I think at least there's that. And I feel like we're about to make another big change, right? Moving into a van so we can be even more adventurous. And we're parking that van and going overseas, you know,
Mm-hmm.
because it's just like, it's, it's how we choose to spend our money instead of a house payment or rent, you know? So
Yeah. Yeah.
we're just trading. But I get that, like the idea of just have up and going, doing something new. I'll always remember when we moved when I was a kid, we moved from Saskatchewan or from BC to Saskatchewan. It was a big move. I was like 11 or 12. And I was excited. Granny and Grandpa had already moved out there, so going back to where they were. Your Granny and Grandpa were already back out there, so we were pretty excited. And my teacher in BC, taught me how to spell Saskatchewan,
Oh,
and it was it's a big word for like
it
a 11
is.
year old or
It
whatever.
is.
And I'm still grateful because it turned out that that was such a useful skill when I got there, to be able to spell it and not feel stupid when you're like in a new class and you can't spell, you know. It was like,
Yeah.
so she was thinking ahead. And the other thing that I want to just say, because it bears saying, is I wondered for a lot of years if Trevor and I would be on the same page. Like, he grew up in Saskatchewan. Parents had a cottage, like a cabin. That was where they went at the lake. And like, that's Saskatchewan culture, right? Like, everybody
Absolutely.
goes to the lake every summer, has a cottage or cabin or whatever. And I said right early on that I never wanted that. I never wanted a
Yeah.
house in the city and a cabin at the lake, because then you're never going anywhere else. You're doing one of those two things. You're paying
Mm-hmm.
for both those things. And I knew that I knew for sure that I wanted to see the world. And also, my brother was like living all over the world right after high school. So we were hearing his stories of being in all these cool places. So I'm sure that shaped it as well. But over the years, like, I always thought Trev might be more inclined to be settled, right? Have a cabin, have a house, like be kind of the more typical. Um, but I've been pleasantly surprised that he's just, over the years, more and more and more, he's got the adventure bug. He wants to try new things. And so I think sometimes couples really grow apart that way when
Mm-hmm.
the kids are a little older, and they might have difficulty coming together on a plan that works for both of them. And
Mm-hmm.
that is something that we both have talked about being quite grateful for at this stage in our life, that we really want the same things.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a blessing that, not everybody gets, because very
No.
often couples will grow apart that way,
Mm.
especially when the kids are not the thing that's keeping you busy, right? And occupied.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I mean, like that's something too. Like, I mean, I do again. Like, I feel pretty fortunate. Like, Rob and my relationship is really strong, and like we talk about those things too. Like, I mean, I think we there's a level of expectation that we have with our kids. Like, I'm pretty sure we're not going to be empty nesters, but like we've prepared ourselves for that, and we've worked through
Mm-hmm.
that, and we have an idea of what we're working towards together. So it's we're
Mm-hmm.
on the same page that way, which is nice because I mean, same with you and Trev have the same goals, and you guys are working together, and you know so it kind of, I think,
Mm-hmm.
brings you together. It's nice. It's you're not
Yeah.
kind of lost.